Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. Since we already have a DPS build for Reaper and a support build for the Scourge, I wanted to create a build for the Harbinger, which is the third specialization for the Necro. So I went with this build, which is a full DPS build for the Harbinger. This build has not an insane amount of strips, as it focuses solely on the damage dealing, and also it's kinda squishy, but still the burst damage is insane and can deal a lot of AoE damage in a matter of seconds and can be really harmful for the enemy Zerg. So I wouldn't underestimate the Harbinger. This is the build. Please keep in mind that I designed this build for War vs World Zerg fights, so don't expect it to win every roaming you do. Some people ask me in the comment if this build is for roaming or not. I only cover Zerg fights, I don't do roaming for now, so this is for roaming. We have Spite, Soul Reaping and Harbinger. On Spite we run Spiteful Talisman, damage increase on enemies without boons, and also Focus and Axe skills recharge faster. We will run both Axe and Focus, so 20% cooldown reduction is very nice on that. Here we run Awaken the Pain. Might will grant us more power but less condition damage. We don't need the condition damage, so extra power is always nice. If you prefer to go more boon strip, you can go Chill of Death, which is a passive boon rip of 3 boons every 16 seconds. I wouldn't recommend it because this build focuses only on doing damage, and it does a very insane amount of damage in a matter of seconds, as I already said. So don't sacrifice any extra power you could get. Then we get Close to Death, 20% damage increase whenever we hit an enemy which is below 50% health. Very huge damage dealer here to finish downies or to finish people which are already dead, and also 20% more damage increase is a lot, since you have a lot of big hits like your Shroud 4 and Shroud 3 and other skills which I will cover in a bit. As an alternative to Close to Death, you could also go Spiteful Spirit, which makes an AoE around you whenever you enter Shroud, and this AoE will remove 1 boon from enemies and an additional boon from enemies if they are below 50% health threshold. But as I already said, you shouldn't be sacrificing any damage for this build, because the pure objective of this build is just doing damage. On Soul Reaping we will run Soul Marks, which makes our marks from staff, the skills 3, 4 and 5, unblockable, and also they will grant us some life force. You see these big AoEs will be unblockable now, and this is very nice because there is a lot of Aegis in War vs World, from Chronomancer and Firebrand especially, so this will bypass that Aegis and do damage. Then here this is a minor trait, but I want to note it because it's a 15% recharge reduced on every Shroud skills, and we will use a lot of Shroud skills to do our burst damage, and I will show you in a bit. Soul Barbs, this is a flat 10% damage increase whenever we enter or we exit Shroud. I enter Shroud, I have this buff for like 10 seconds, and now you see it's about to end. You can leave Shroud and you get it again fully to 10 seconds. So it's basically a permanent 10% damage increase, almost permanent. Then we run Death Perception, which increases our critical chance by 15%, which is huge, so we can have less precision and more power and ferocity in the gears. And also it will increase our critical damage by 15% whenever we enter Shroud. So what you should do is dropping your wells and every skill you can, and then you enter Shroud, so these wells and every other AoE on the ground will benefit from the 15% critical damage increase. Now the fun begins, because we run Harbinger. As you might already know, the Harbinger will have a Blight mechanic, so whenever you enter Shroud you will get 1 stack of Blight per second, and this Blight will reduce your total HP, but it will increase your damage. So with this trait we will get another additional damage modifier to our Blight stacks, and also we will get 10% critical damage increase to targets which have torments on them. So torment is very common to have because we run a lot of Scourges lately, and Scourge can apply torment with every skill from the F1 to the F5, the Ghastly Breach, and also other skills which I don't recall the name right now. So this is the best trait in my opinion for now. Here we have some additional vitality and some additional healing per stack of blight we have. It really helps us because we are very squishy with the blight. Here we get implacable foe, gain stability when entering shroud, gain ferocity based on your vitality. So here some people could run twisted medicine because you will apply your boons from your elixirs to your allies, but in my opinion, since this build just wants to do damage, you should go for this because one stack of stability is kinda nice, okay, but still the ferocity change is a lot because we will have a lot of vitality. So right now with the current trait we will have these stats here, like almost 12k, almost 1200 ferocity. If we swap back this trait, you see we lose like 200 ferocity, which is like 14% damage or something like that. So just go for implacable foe in my opinion in this build. Maybe in the future I will cover a build which is more supportish and will run this trait and also the quickness trait. For now I will go full DPS. Then here we have this minor talent, which is kinda nice because you can enter shroud even if you are on 0 life force. As you can see, I'm depleting my life force, so I can show you. Once I reach 0 of life force, you can still enter just by pressing F1 even if you have 0 life force, because this trait will proc immediately. So you see I am at 0 life force, then 5 more seconds it will recharge. You can press it and you gain that 15% which is stated in the tooltip. Very nice trait to have. But still, in War vs World Zerg fights you will have a lot of life force because people will die, and also your marks will generate life force per hit, so you will get a lot just by hitting enemies. The last trait is Cascading Corruption. This is a strong trait because it gives you 240 power flat, basically, without doing nothing. And also, you will pulse some damage around you. You see 370 damage every 3 seconds to 5 enemies around you. It's not a lot, but it's the most important trait to do damage in this trait line here. Deathly Haste is very strong. It pulses quickness and fury to you and your allies, but in my opinion you shouldn't be sacrificing power and some additional damage for this, because other classes can give you quickness and fury, and also you will not stay in shroud for very long, so you wouldn't benefit a lot from this trait. Just go for the maximum damage possible. The gears are the same as my damage reaper, so we run a mix of Marauder, Valkyrie, Dragon, Berserker. Just aim to reach 80% critical chance, and also you are helped a lot with the 15% flat critical damage increase and critical chance increase, so it's very easy to reach 80. I just reached like 78.5 because in War vs World we will have the minor bloodlust from the Borderlands, which grants us like 1.5 critical chance, so this is the choice to go. Here I run the superior rune of the TF, which is a precision rune. If you don't want to, you can just go sacrifice some power and ferocity from the stats, from the gears. You see I run some Valkyrie, which has 0 precision, but I prefer to run Thief. It's kinda the same. I have this build since a while, so it's okay for me. Maybe it can be min-maxed a bit more, but it works like this. Then we have the weapons. Superior Sigil of Frenzy on Axe, and on the Focus we run Superior Sigil of Force. They are both Marauder stats. On the Staff, which is Marauder also, Superior Sigil of Cruelty and Superior Sigil of Force. And then every trinket is a mix of Berserker, as you can see, some Dragon and also some Marauder. It's just up to you. Just aim to reach 78.5 or maybe 80 critical chance. The relic is the Relic of the Firework, which is a relic which increases your damage by 7% whenever you hit an enemy with a skill which has a cooldown of 20 or more. So we have the skill 4 from the staff, the skill 5. Then here we have the skill 5 again. You see 16 seconds, sorry, but it's reduced by this trait, so it still work. Then we have also our skill 4 from the Shroud. You see, no, sorry, the skill 4 doesn't work, it's the skill 5. You see, whenever you hit them, you will get this buff with the skill 5. Your utility skills should consist in Elixir of Promise for healing skill, then you must have Well of Suffering and Well of Corruption for doing damage, and also they are unblockable, they deal decent amount of damage, and also this one will strip on boons on the enemies, so I would not skip this. I know the main purpose of this build is doing damage, but this skill is unblockable, not like, for example, the Well of Darkness, which deals a bit more damage, but it's not unblockable, so I would just go for Corruption, and also some Corruption is needed, because lately every strip was nerfed, most of the time from every class, so some additional damage and strips are always welcome. Then your elite skill should be your Elixir of Ambition, which will apply every boon to yourself for a short duration, but still it's enough to deal damage for it. And then the last utility skill I will comment. As I was saying, your last utility skill is up to you. Maybe during a fight you will need more might and more fury because your party is not applying enough of them and you are missing maybe those juicy crits which we worked very hard for. So you could run an elixir, for example the Elixir of Risk, which also will grant you 10 stacks of Blight, and as you already know maybe, or I will tell you now, if you have some Blight stacks on you, some skills will perform better, like you see the elixirs will deal double damage and condition duration increase by 100%. If you have like 5 stacks of Blight on these, 5 stacks here, and here you must have 10 stacks of Blight, and also the elixirs themselves will apply some Blight on you. This also works for the Shroud skills. You see this skill, the skill 3 and the skill 4 are the main damage dealer in Shroud, and they will do double damage if you have 5 stacks of Blight on you, and also you will consume those stacks once you use those skills. You see, you consume the 5 stacks and then you get 10 stacks, you see Blight on self. So this is how it works. This is a very important mechanic and I will show you in a bit when I explain the rotation of this build. If this elixir didn't convince you, you could go for Well of Darkness, which is some additional damage, and also Blind, which is very strong, and Chill, but still this skill is not like huge damage, is much worse than the Well of Suffering, and also it's not unblockable, so the enemy could just block every hit from this, but it's still decent, I guess. Otherwise, you could go for the Signet of Spite, which is power increase by 180, you just never press this, just keep it there and it will increase your damage. Otherwise, if you like elixirs but you don't need might and fury, you could also go for this one, which grants quickness to you and is very nice to have. And also, if you don't like the quickness one, you could go for the resistance one, so you cannot be blinded for this duration of 5 seconds of resistance, and you are sure you will land every hit from your Shroud skills and from your wells and from your weapon skills. Let's take a look at weapons skills. So your skill 2 is a channeled big damage dealer, your skill 3 is an AoE damage dealer, and also if it will hit an enemy which is below 50% health threshold, it will also trigger a secondary explosion. You see, one, and then the secondary explosion, which also deals a decent damage around the target, and also it will remove 1 boon from every target struck by the first explosion. Then the skill 4 is a projectile, very slow, almost 0 damage and single target, but still it will generate some life force if the enemy will not block or reflect it. Most of the time you will not be using this. And then the skill 5 is a huge damage dealer, single target, and also it will remove 3 boons. The damage increases per boon you remove up to 3 boons. So if the enemy has less than 3 boons, you shouldn't be using this. If you are sure the enemy has 3 or more boons, you should be using this, and you will deal a lot of damage on them, and also you will proc your Relic of Fireworks boon. On the staff we have a piercing auto attack, which is this one. You see, you can hit more than 1 target with it, and also it will generate some life force on you. but it's a projectile, so it can be reflected, and also it's very slow, so I wouldn't recommend using this unless you have nothing left, but it shouldn't be the case on this class. Then the skill 2 is a very low cooldown mark on the ground. It deals a decent amount of damage and also applies bleeding and regeneration. It's unblockable because of this trait, and it's unblockable like your skill 3, skill 4 and skill 5. So from 2 to 5 every skill is unblockable because of this trait. So you will not miss any damage with this trait. The skill 3 deals like twice the damage of the skill 2 almost, and applies chills and poison, but it has a big cooldown compared to the skill 2. Use it to do damage, of course. The skill 4 is your most important skill, because you see like the number is like 4 times your skill 2, and this can deal like 10k on enemies if you can crit it, and if they are maybe below 50% health, so you will benefit from this trait. It's unblockable. The cooldown is relatively lower compared to other big damage skills on other classes, so in my opinion staff is not that bad like people like to depict. But if you don't like staff, you could also go greatsword. In my opinion, on this build, which only focuses on burst damage, you should just be going for the staff, because your skill 4 deals a lot of damage. And then we have the skill 5, which is an AoE unblockable fear. It has a kinda high cooldown, but it's nice to have because it is a CC, and also you will benefit from the relic of the firework, which is this one, 7% damage increase whenever you hit an enemy with a skill which has a cooldown of 20 seconds or more, and this one has 32. For this example, I will run the Elixir of Risk because I need the extra fury so I can properly execute my rotation and do proper damage. What you should be doing in a fight is using your Elixir of Risk, so you will get 10 stacks of Blight, Might and Fury. Then immediately go for the Elixir of Ambition. Be sure to be on the enemies, so you will deal damage. You see, you will have 10 stacks of Blight thanks to the Elixir of Risk, and you will consume them, and instead you will grant yourself 15 stacks of Blight after you drop this elixir, and also you will benefit from the double damage because you just consumed the 10 stacks of Blight you just gained from the Elixir of Risk. So you see, Elixir of Risk, 10 stacks of Blight, sorry, not Might. Then you use this and you will consume them, and you will deal double damage with this skill, and instead you will get in return 15 stacks of Blight. You see, I have every boon on me, and also the enemies will have like 5 conditions on them. So I will start again so you understand better. So first of all, you need to use your Elixir of Risk. If you don't run Elixir of Risk, you could also go for Elixir of Promise. They both grant you 10 stacks of Blight. So once we have 10 stacks of Blight, we will use our elite skill, which will consume 10 stacks of Blight, so it can deal double damage. And also this elite skill will grant us every boon in the game, and also grant us 15 stacks of Blight, which we will use in a bit. So you use this, you get every boon you can, then immediately you should be going for the staff skill 4 while you have these boons. Now I'm talking, so the boons will vanish, but still I will show you how it works later, fully without interruptions. At this point, once you have used your skill 4, which is your main damage dealer on staff, you should be dropping your wells and immediately enter Shroud, so you can benefit from the 15% critical damage increase. And then once you are in Shroud, you should be having 15 stacks from the elixir you just dropped. At this point you should be using your skill 4, which is your main damage dealer in Shroud, and also then the skill 3, which is the secondary damage dealer in Shroud. Now I will perform the full rotation and the full burst damage without interrupting myself for talking, so let's get into it. You see, the boons lasted enough to do the full rotation on these golems. If this was too fast, you can pause the video or maybe just lower down the speed of the video so you can see it properly. If you want, I can cover it in a second. This is the full rotation, and also the speed of this video was slowed so I can explain better. First thing, you drop your Elixir of Risk or the elixir, this one, the healing skill, to get this 10 stacks of Blight. immediately you go for the elite skill, which deals a decent amount of damage, as you can see, and also gives you every boon in the game and 25 stacks of might. Then we get 15 stacks of blight back, so we could use them for the skill 3 and the skill 4 in Shroud, which respectively consume 5 stacks each. Then the skill 4 on the staff, which is your highest damage dealer on this staff and is unblockable, AoE, 5 targets. You see like 9k on this golem, and you also proc the Relic of Fireworks. At this point you drop your wells so you can enter Shroud safely, because we will need Shroud because of this trait, which is Death Perception, 15% critical damage increase during Shroud, and so the wells will benefit from this buff. You should be dropping first your Well of Corruption. Here I made a little mistake, but still the Well of Corruption is less damage than the Well of Suffering, so you shouldn't be losing one additional pulse to cast this well here. So first you should be doing Well of Corruption, then Well of Suffering, so you just lose one pulse without Shroud of the Well of Suffering. At this point you should be entering Shroud and immediately cast your skill 4, which is your highest damage dealer, and also this will consume 5 stacks of blight and deal double damage. You see how much damage, like 20k damage. And then immediately you should be doing your skill 3, which is a bit less damage than the skill 4, but still it will consume other 5 stacks of blight and will deal double damage. So let's see it again. Shroud, skill 4, you land and you deal like 20k. Sorry, it's here, and then the skill 3. You see, let's see it again. It's kinda buggy in this video, sorry. Okay, you enter wells, Shroud, skill 4, you see 20k under this 4k from the well, and then skill 3, 16k, and then your rotation is basically over. You should be leaving Shroud at this point, and then you swap to Axe. You should be casting your skill 3, which is your highest damage skill, and is also it's around you, so you hit 5 targets, and at this point someone from the enemy Zerg should be dead. The only downside of this build is that the blight makes you kinda squishy, because you see how much health point you will lose because of it. It's in percentage, so even upgrading your vitality will not help much, because it will just reduce your health by 1.5% per stack. And also the other downside of this build is that you need to land your skills. They are not very easy. You see the enemies are there. By the time you get there, maybe they just moved out or dodged. You are kinda easy to predict. And also your skill 3 is another mobility skill which takes a bit to cast. And also once you have done this burst damage, which should generate downies, okay, but still you will have almost nothing left to do damage, and so this is a big downside of this build. But in my opinion it can work to generate downies on the enemies, because it has really an immense amount of burst damage. Your other Shroud skills are, for example, your skill 5, which deals 0 damage because it is a CC. Basically you will channel for 1 second or 2, and then you will cast this circle, which will pull enemies like the elite gravity well from the Chronomancer, and it's a much lower cooldown and it's much more accessible. And also you can move like the well of gravity well, you can move around. You see, I joined these enemies. For the channel you need to stay still, and after the channel is done you can move around and the enemies will be still CC'd, for a total of 3 CCs per enemies. Then your other 2 skills are the auto attack, which is a projectile, and the skill 2, which is another projectile, very huge damage to be honest, but it's a projectile and in War vs World it wouldn't work very properly. If you are sure there are no projectile mitigation at the moment, you could be using your skill 2, which is a huge damage dealer, and also it will pierce and it will hit 5 enemies. You see, a lot of damage to both of them, but most of the time there will be bubbles or wall of reflections and any other reflectile. This is it for today's video, guys. Please consider leaving a like and a subscribe to my channel so I can understand better what you like, which content you like, which builds you like, which classes you like, and see you on to the next video. Thank you for sticking in with me. I will also be doing a big giveaway for 2k subscribers, which is very close. I just need 100 subscribers and I will be giving away a legendary weapon. Please stay still with me and see you on to the next video. Bye!